Hello and welcome to our program tonight, and thank you to everybody for joining in for More Than Just Paper, the Rise of the Unstoppable Stationery Market. My name is Karen Romano and I am the current president of the Book Industry Guild of New York. It's a little hard to believe that we're actually at the end of the year. This is our last program of the year, although it's a year that I think most of us are really ready to put behind us. But maybe that's why I particularly like the word unstoppable in our discussion tonight. It also seems very fitting that we're ending the year talking about something that is both enduring and new. One little bit of housekeeping before we begin. There will be opportunity for people to ask questions. Please don't use the little chat thing, use the little Q&A at the bar at the bottom of your screen. Well, we have a great panel tonight, and I am absolutely delighted to be able to introduce Olivia Hosken, who is our moderator for the discussion this evening. Olivia is a style and interiors writer at Town and Country, where she writes about fashion, art, architecture, and lifestyle. Previously, she was the managing editor at Dwell and has also been published in Wallpaper. So with that, I am delighted to be able to turn it over to you, Olivia. All yours.
Thank you so much, Karen. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. So I'm particularly excited about this panel because stationery has been something I've watched very closely as a journalist throughout the past decade. Since 2008, there have been digital alternatives to nearly everything people could possibly have. And so a question that constantly comes up is this the end of stationery? And as everyone here tonight knows, the answer every year is no, it is not. But often I'll get some pushback on that. And they'll say, of course, you think that everyone's using stationery, you work at Town and Country. But really, who still writes letters? And the answer is everyone here. And in 2020, which unfortunately saw the demise of many industries, stationery sales rose even higher, with some companies reporting a 300% increase over 2019. I reported on this apparent phenomenon earlier this year. And in speaking to Dr. Priya Raghuveer, a professor of business and marketing at New York University, there is a real psychological benefit to stationery. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, humans seek out the basics first. So food, water, sleep. The next level is safety and then social needs. And for 2020, this meant that after we had hoarded all the toilet paper we possibly could, we started turning to wanting to connect with others. And that's something that a virtual environment simply can't fulfill. So stationery continues to be not only a way that we celebrate each other when we can't be there in person, but is a way that we really fulfill these social needs from a psychological aspect. To go deeper into how we are seeing that play out in the industry today, I'm excited to discuss stationery's unstoppable rise with this panel of experts who cover the full spectrum of the market. I'd like to introduce them now. Lindley Boegehold is an editorial director at Clarkson Potter, the illustrated book imprint of Penguin Random House. She oversees a list of over 50 gift products a year, and most recently has seen a lot of popularity surrounding prompt journals, including Becoming, a guided journal by Michelle Obama. Emily Ley is the founder of Simplified, an award-winning brand of planners and organizational tools for busy women. Maureen Gallagher is the sales and product development director for teNeues New York City Stationery under the umbrella of teNeues Publishing. Her division focuses on bringing art and boutique design to practical note card and notebook products. Kevin Garcia is the co-founder of sustainable stone paper company Karst, which transforms recycled stone into simple, functional, and beautiful products. And Shamese Shular is the owner and creator of Station by Hand. She creates stationery using traditional and vintage Japanese textiles, fabrics, and decorative papers, using the Asian stab binding technique. So thank you all for joining me here tonight. Let's start with the increase of stationery sales this year. What were some of the biggest shifts you saw in the market during the pandemic, and why do you think they were so successful for stationery?
I'll dive in just quickly and say that postcard sales for us were absolutely astonishing. I think in part it was people doing mailing campaigns for political and other issues of the day. We have several hundred postcard boxes that appealed to bibliophiles, Jane Austen freaks, but also contemporary illustrators, and we just couldn't keep them in stock. And I think people were really literally buying them for their postcard mailing groups and buying them again and again and buying in multiples.
Amazing. Yes, postcards were definitely a way for people to reach out in a way that felt a little more special than an email or a text, particularly when causes really mattered to them.
I also think in part this growth in stationery came from people's desire to unplug and this ongoing sensation that a handwritten note just feels a little better and means a little more than just zipping out an email or a text or any kind of electronic communication. So I think people being shut in their homes and away from work and away from basic human meeting up, that sending notes and sending handwritten things that show up in your mailbox and just make you feel a little better. So I think that had a lot to do with it as well.
My company, as you mentioned, makes planners and organizational tools. And I found that women especially were flocking to non-digital tools that they felt like they could trust, that weren't going to crash or fail or, die because they weren't charged. And we found that because people were managing so much this year in terms of the pandemic and some managing virtual learning and all of that, that they were turning to things that they could really put to good use to manage all kinds of things. And a paper product like that really gave them the opportunity to dig in.
I think with all the things that happened this year, I think so many of us finally had the time and space to actually slow down along with everyone else. I think in the past, I guess, we all are just kind of wake up and go and start ticking off the to-do list or see who needs us for what. And I think we just had a moment where we can just kind of reflect on ourselves, and we needed another place besides the screen to do that. And it kind of feels like people are probably using multiple notebooks now. One notebook could be for a certain set of thoughts, or like Emily said, so many of us are now homeschooling. We're kind of reorganizing and getting back to sort of the basics in a way. So I think it's affected all of us, all of our sales, and everyone's finding use in many of our products for different reasons, ways to express themselves and keep it together.
Yeah, I really agree. And my we expanded our notebooks a little bit this year, as well as we're offering playing cards and note cards that we've always been strong with, but there was a definite lift, I think, across everything because as Shamese said, there's this slowing down, which, we didn't want that necessarily, all of us, but once we were kind of forced into it, I don't know, it seems like it helped us remember these other things, I don't want to call it too nostalgic. It's not really a retro thing, but a little bit, it's like people used paper calendars before Google Calendar, and people, and with the extra, but it feels like the extra time, the day is still the same amount, but, somehow, slowing down and having more of this time. I also think we're also benefiting from the self-care angle of things. And if you're going to be at home, and if you're going to, try to look at the small steps that you're doing, writing is just such a natural extension, whether it's in a notebook or a note card to someone, or, whatever it is. It's such a nice, easy, anyone can do it kind of activity. And it's all your level. Like if you're at the level of writing poetry, it's beautiful and you can do that. If you just want to say hi to someone, you can do that too.
Yeah. I like
Something
that.
else, Something else
Go
I've
ahead.
noticed is that we've come a long way from just the Crane's note paper with monograms. People are personalizing their letter paper with stickers and gel pens and glitter and, you know, all kinds, and, you know, little cutout hearts that spill out of an envelope. So I think that that's another way that, you know, people have recognized that there are a lot more options to make a really individual message with, you know, the color you choose, the paper you choose. If you put a sticker on it, you could fold up your own envelope. And I think that's something that people are finding restful and expressive.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And that is such a great sort of segue into my second question, which one thing I saw when I was working, when I was reporting on stationery, is that people will use Gmail or Outlook, and that will be for their work. But when it's their home and their personal lives, they'll shift to something more tangible, like a planner or notebook, you know, and kind of a way to create these boundaries when really everything's happening, I guess, for me personally, in my living room. And as people are using stationery, notebooks, planners as a way to sort of delineate their work and their personal lives, how are you seeing this play out in customer preferences, how they're using it or what they're asking for?
Well, I can I can speak to the planner side of things. We have seen a shift, not just in 2020, but really, I think something that started many years ago. I mean, even as far back as like 2010, 2011, that the scrapbooking world has kind of shifted over to the planning world. And so a lot of our customers are using their planners as scrapbooks in ways of not just planning out their days and what, you know, lies ahead, but also what they've done and gratitude and kind of journaling and that sort of thing. And so I think it's become, like you said, a much more personal thing, not just something that you would use tactically, but something that you could also use as a way of memory keeping. So we have seen a huge uptick in things like accessories. Lindley, like you mentioned, with the stickers and the pens, all sorts of pens and the washi tape, and I mean, the variety, you know, everybody wants to kind of make it their own. And so I think there is some level of personal expression and, you know, that's happening with these sorts of things as well.
I would also say, and I know I read this somewhere, so I'm not being original, that people are actually buying multiple planners for different sections of their lives. So they've got one for their kids' activities and school. They've got one for meal planning and shopping and stuff like that. And then they've got another one that's for inspirational thoughts. That's sort of an intentional planner where you might put down your health, how many steps you took that day, if you did yoga, how much water you drank, and maybe rolling in some, you know, some gratitude, some spiritual practice as well. So that's one person with 3 planners.
Yeah, we see a lot of people who use one for business, one for home, and then we see some that use it for, you know, day-to-day agenda type stuff and then meal planning. But yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's a way of, you know, the boundary comment is exactly what it is. It's creating boundaries between multiple areas of life, and 2020 gave many of us many areas to focus on. I'm homeschooling 3 kids right now, so I'm very sensitive to that.
Bravo to you and anyone else who's homeschooling. You get all the journals, all the planners that you need to stay
No,
sane.
all the bravos go to the teachers who are managing this whole thing. Yeah.
Them too. Yeah. Absolutely.
Or you could be like me and you just love to start new ones.
Yep.
And one thing I thought was really interesting when we were talking about this earlier is that a few of you were mentioning about prompt journals, and I'd love to talk about those because I think that's a really big shift. And I know that we have sort of different opinions, and I know Shamese also takes a different approach, but just the way people are using journals and sort of the rise of prompt journals versus blank pages and how we've sort of seen that play out. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. So we produce a lot of planners and notebooks and general stationery as well. And we've always had planner as a sort of a forefront product for a lot of our, you know, our core brand. And what we've noticed is that prompt planners are really a great way to sort of get that message over to the consumer, but consumers and users are loving that feedback, and they love something that they can feel part of, but also be part of a brand. And so what we've done differently this year and last year as well is we took 12-month planner, we broke it down into 12 segment focus groups. So each month there's a key focus group, whether it's improving your mental health, whether it's increasing your, improving your diet, working on, goal setting, vision setting. Each month there's a core focus group, and that the end goal is to, when you get to December, hopefully you've worked through all these focus groups, and then you've figured out a whole, holistic approach to your mental health and also your productivity. So I think 2020 has been a bit of a shaky year, and it's been really great to sort of reflect on it, and then go into 2021 with sort of a clean slate. So, we've been pretty lucky in that sense that we've done that in the past, and I think now is the year to really make use of that product more than ever. To look back at the previous year, see what was difficult, find out what you want to work on, and take that into 2021. But yeah, again, prompt planners have been definitely on the increase. We're finding not just planners, but motivational books, productivity planners, mental health is something that's we've been focusing on as well. Like, a lot of people are struggling to find themselves. Like, what do they write on a blank page? Like, I have problems with that. Like, sometimes I find a blank notebook. It's like, okay, what do I write about? What do I journal about? And sometimes those prompts can sort of engage me and feel, help me along the way to provide something that's useful. So that's something that we've found and I think is useful for us.
Well, I would say that for us at Potter, the backbone of our program is prompted journals. When I got there 5 years ago, one of the bellwethers was a little journal, $16.95 craft paper cover stamped with foil, called Q&A a Day. And it's 368 pages, and there's a prompt on every page. But there are 5 years that stack down, and people have actually gone through and done it. So you answer the same question 5 years in a row as you cycle through the journal. And it's been a gigantic success. And I think people just organically came to it because the prompts were quite simple, but you could see how you were changing as you cycled through these years, answering these pretty basic questions. And then we spun it off and we did Q&A a Day for moms and for grandparents and for kids and for college students and all of that. And I think, it was such a simple premise that it did break down people's sort of fear of journaling, of, writing down words on paper that might define you somehow. And it was just an icebreaker that worked.
I'm an author also, and the content that I write about in terms of simplifying your life and organizing, we pull that into all of our products. And what we found since the beginning, but even more so lately, is that people want to be part of something. Like, they don't, at least our people, they don't want to buy just a planner from us. They don't want to buy just a notepad. They want to know, just like you said, Kevin, they want to know that they're part of it. They're part of a movement or a belief system or a community of some sort. And so kind of fostering that by providing not just the product, but also we provide coaching and, my books and written materials and just all sorts of social media things to them to help them really have that fresh start thereafter, and not just say like, hey, here's your product, now go deal with it. And we have found that to literally be like the secret sauce to what we do.
Yeah, I agree with that, Emily. I think, we've come across that same phenomenon, I guess. And one thing we did this year is every month, so once you finish your month or your focus point, we've got a QR code, on the bottom of each page. And so that'll take you to the website to then further break down, to jump into a community, to, voice your concerns or your ideas or whatever you may have. And I think that's something we're trying to build as well, is like, okay, you've got all this information and you've improved your whole, yourself, and how can you pass this information on to other people and maybe reflect on it in a wider audience. And again, to feel part of something beyond just your personal planner is something special.
I think that's fascinating, just a way to build community and to also be introspective. But I love for Shamese to weigh in, because I know Shamese makes, for those who don't know, she makes the most beautiful notebooks and stationery out of an Asian stab binding technique, and the pages are often blank. And that, I think, opens it up to an entirely different experience that I'd love for you to talk about a little bit.
I will admit, from the beginning, or at least when I started, I didn't think anyone was gonna like it because there was no lines. there were no prompts, and I think it's kind of been geared more towards the artist community, where they just are inspired by the cover. They're inspired by the fabric, where it comes from, how it's designed, and they can open it up and they can feel free to do whatever it is that they want on that page on that day. And it doesn't have to follow a consistent pattern, which I think for me and my personality type too, sometimes people like that, where it's kind of rebellious, I guess, in a way, where it's like, I don't want to be told how I'm going to use this particular set of, paper. And they just want to feel free to express whatever that means to them. And so I think that's kind of the connection that I keep making for everyone that ends up finding it and keeps buying it, and for themselves or for others. And I have started creating a new product where it's kind of like a large memo pad. So it has blank paper, lined paper, grid paper, and graph paper all in one place. So that's been getting really popular too. So there's an option where if someone does kind of want to have a selection, of however they want to organize their thoughts that day, there's now a product that I'm offering where they can have all that in one spot. Because I knew that there was a market for that. Like, people would say, do you have any with lined paper? And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. So I'm getting into it. I'm coming around.
For the free spirits and the spirits who like guidelines.
Yeah.
Shamese, where do you sell your works? Is it mostly online? Do you have a shop front or?
Just online now. I used to do a bunch of markets when I first started out. Obviously, we're not able to do that this year, so it's all online. Yeah.
Because I'm feeling that it's things like that, those bespoke kinds of notebooks that artists use, I would think you would have an opportunity with, art shops, art supply shops too.
I'm glad you said that. I mean, I'm starting to try to figure out more ways to get in front of people, and try to figure out the best stores to approach, because I don't think I do it all on my own. So I'm not really trying to do something like a huge store, but I want to do something more specialty. So something indie, something art.
I have a list I think I can share with you.
Okay. That would be awesome. Thank you.
Writing that down. Sorry, this wasn't supposed to be a networking thing, but you are.
I appreciate it.
No problem.
Oh, I love this. And Lindley, I did want to touch before we go on to the next question. I know one of the projects that you've worked on are creating prompted journals as companions to other books.
Well,
I'd love if you could speak a little bit about that.
Well, that's because we are primarily a book publisher. A lot of the prompted journals we do are book adjacent, in that, we identify an author who has a specific program or point of view or story that can be morphed and massaged into a prompted journal. And if they've got, well, like Mrs. O, I mean, if they have a gigantic following and a passionate audience, to be able to tease out from her book prompts that make people feel that she's sort of accompanying them on their journey towards, realizing new things about themselves, self-expression, what their family history is. So we've been looking at that in all kinds of categories. We have one called Designing Your Life Workbook with a couple of guys who are computer engineers and designers at Stanford, and they developed this really beautiful graphic way that you can sort of map out your life and where you are and where you're going. And it was a standard hardcover book, and we thought this could really be a useful visual journal. So we transformed that content into, blew a lot of air into it, put in some lists and some question marks and stuff. And so all the people who read that book and thought, I would like to try designing my life, then had a tool that they could go ahead and do it with. So that's definitely part of, I mean, because we are essentially a book publishing company, that's been a giant resource for us in creating prompted journals next to books.
I think it's super interesting. And one of the other shifts that I think we talked about earlier is the majority of stationery customers are women, but men have also become increasingly interested, and also different age groups and different customers have been gravitating towards stationery. Could you all talk about maybe some new people who you've seen buying your products and interacting with stationery this year or the past couple of years?
I guess I can try and answer this one, being the only male on the panel. So when we launched in 2016, I saw the overall market. It was very, I won't say very, but majorly it was female driven, and you could see the arrangement of brands. A lot of it had pinks, a lot of purples, light lavenders, and I thought, okay, well, if we're going to do this with our product and our brand, I'm going to try to be as neutral and as centered as possible. And so we went to the market. And the strategy that we had is that we didn't want to, this wasn't for any guy and it wasn't for any woman. It was just for anyone who loved stationery and who loved to use notebooks and paper and wanted a better experience. So everything from our messaging to our videos and our imagery, we try to keep it very design focused and homely, but we try to be as very gender neutral as possible. And what we've seen when we did launch, yes, we were predominantly females, but now, about 40, I think just over 40% of our consumers are males. And so that's like pretty huge. I'm pretty happy with that. And, men don't tend to shop online for stationery. Usually it's they'll walk into a store, buy a book, and then they'll see your notebook and say, oh yeah, I need another notebook, and I'll just grab one and walk out. So that trend has shifted a little bit more. Males are now being a bit more confident in purchasing stationery online. So that's something that I've noticed. But yeah.
I think that bullet journaling had a lot to do with that, because I actually met the guy who invented it. He's a Random House author, and it's a very, the original presentation of it was very masculine. It was a black sort of moleskin book, and then excuse me, and it had this whole system behind it, right? So that you could make an index, table of contents. Sorry. And I think that opened up journaling to men a lot, just that one product. I'm coughing, someone else.
It's tough with an all-day Zoom schedule to keep everything well watered. I know Kevin and Maureen, you also touched on this as well with the bullet journaling and sort of preferences for grids versus lines, and how that kind of varied between also countries as well as gender and age groups. And I know, Emily, you can touch on this a little bit too if you'd like, but if you all could share a little bit about your insights on how that changes market to market, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting one. I'd mentioned this before in a previous chat, and we see lined paper, bullet journal paper, like dot grid paper is our primary products in the US market. And then as soon as you go over to countries like Germany, they are, obsessed with grid paper. They just want grid paper, 5 mil squared, nothing else. And so we've got to find ways to accommodate and have available stock in those specific SKUs and that type of paper type for that market. So countries like Australia, Canada, and the UK and the US, all very similar, lined, blank, and dot grid paper. We've seen dot grid paper really take off over the last few years, purely because of things like, bullet journaling. Lindley, you mentioned, I think it was Ryder Carroll who started that phenomenon. It's been amazing. So that dot grid paper has really taken off. But again, it really depends on the market. Grid paper is something that we don't sell over here very often, and definitely not in the US, but over in countries like Germany, it's their #1 go-to.
Kevin, how did you find out, I guess, what works best? Was it just kind of trial and error, or you did some studies, or just kind of looked at what's in their stores a lot? Or
we did a lot of testing. So usually we provide all products, and we just see, okay, what's working, what's not working. Even certain colors are preferenced in certain countries, which we found is sometimes difficult because we've got multiple colors with multiple paper types, and then you end up having 100 different types of products that you're trying to push into one store to provide to consumers to purchase. So what we found is we were selling out of all this grid paper in Europe, and we didn't know why, and it turned out it was all from Germany. So we have to sort of, think ahead and just see what the market wants, and then try and provide it where necessary. It's very hard to predict trends. We try the best we can, but at the end of the day, it is quite difficult because a trend can snap within one or 2 months, and the whole market's different. So we try and accommodate for best we can.
I think social media is helping us all out with this as well. I think we can agree. You can really see the action second by second from, your typical customer to someone you wish was a customer, or, I don't follow any influencers specifically, but, you look at a couple of people you like, you look at a few colleagues, you look at, it's what we do is so fun and rich because you can look at so many different things to help inform you with what's gonna work out or not. And then it is like trial and error. You just do your most educated guess. But I say, like, you look at it all. You're looking at sales. You talk to a sales rep. You look at, Instagram. You go to the store yourself, and you're there for your own self, and you see what's going on over there. It's all, kind of swirling around, and you become, the more you're just focusing and listening to the street and, your people, I think it becomes sort of intuitive, especially if you're enjoying it. So that's like kind of important, to stay connected to what you're doing, and it gives you energy back. I don't know. Sounds a little kooky, but it's working for me. I don't know.
I think that's where my hang up comes in, is that no one in the stores, they don't have what I'm making. So it's hard to tell, but I do try to go outside of my own comfort zone, because I do gravitate towards certain colors too. And I'm trying to be more neutral. And it's not even necessarily about trying to reach like a masculine market, but some people just like something more chill than all the bright colors.
Yeah.
Or, to them that might be distracting. So I'm just learning.
Yeah, the other thing about stores is you want to have one eye open and one eye closed, because on one hand, they don't want to waste their money and they think they know what's going to win. But I have to say, just because it's in a store doesn't mean it's selling either. So that's where I do love the trade shows for some of that. Like you see everybody all in one place. You can even just hear people talking around you, it's just a good, and really listening to yourself, and, what you're doing is so inspiring for us and just beautiful, because it's just coming out of, your wishes, and as long as you keep coming back to it, like see what everyone else is doing, come back to that.
Yeah.
I find at the gift shows like New York now, that what I'm always astonished at is these small gift shop owners, they know exactly what their customers want, so they'll come in and they'll just make a beeline for certain things on the shelf and say, I'll have 6 of that. No, I won't have that. That's not going to work for me. And they they've been selling to their peeps for so long, and they just know. And sometimes you can move them over a little and say, well, why don't you try this? We did a year ago, we published a journal called Moonless with a woman who does these sort of cryptic utterances on Instagram, and she just puts up round objects and talks about the phases of the moon. We did this very discreet, quiet, sort of denim colored paper journal with slightly ochre tinted pages, and some of her illustrations and some prompts about the phases of the moon. And it has just worked so well. And it's opened up all these little sort of cactus and crystal shops that we weren't in. And it didn't look like anything else. But one of my editors was a former buyer at Urban Outfitters. And sometimes I think she can see things around the corner before they actually hit retail. And she found this woman online, and it didn't look like anything else we published, but it found its place. And it was very chill, to use your word. It was a very chill product. And it really worked.
My perspective is kind of different. So we used to be wholesale. We did retail and wholesale. So we sold on our online shop, and then I got started in 2008. And so I thought the right thing to do to grow was to, take on wholesale and get into all these stores. And in 2015, we were in 800 stores, and it was fantastic. And we were doing all the trade shows, and we won Best New Product Awards. And I was really exhausted and had a really exhausted team. And I also had infant twins and a 4-year-old, and was on 48 airplanes publishing my first book that year. So we decided to drop wholesale to increase our margin and also increase our connection to the people who are actually buying the product, like the end user. And it was absolute magic for us. It was terrifying to do that, but it was that 80-20 rule of focusing, more of our time on what was producing more revenue was just so life-giving to us, and allowed us to connect better with our customers, and our revenue went way, way, way up. And now we have licensed collections in big stores like Walmart and Target. And so the feedback I hear is from our direct customer, but then also from the buyers for these stores. And what I would say is, I do feel like trends change so fast, and especially in working with Target and Walmart and some of those larger stores, I get nervous, like, what's the trend? What's the color? What's the paper? Are we on track? Are we doing it right? And I've found that when we stick to our guns about who we are and who we're not, who we're targeting and who we're not, there was a point in time where we thought maybe we should be more neutral. We should bring on, because our colors are, bright and all, big and bright and bold and preppy. And we tried to create a line for men. And what we quickly learned was that it just wasn't who we were. And what we found is that there was a woman buying a more neutral product. And so that line kind of got taken in under Simplified with our Simplified planners. But for us, it's been equally valuable to say who we are and who we're not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, because even though I'm so much newer than you are, I feel exactly the same about pulling back on the wholesale and just staying more connected with the end user, because that's who I'm talking to on Instagram. That's who's tagging me and who's showing off what they got and how excited they are. Like, I don't want to lose connection with those people. So yeah,
Can
I don't want to
share with you
it's
this like tagline that we have just adopted, and it's so much of who we are. We always say we want to grow deep, not wide. So we want to grow, but we want to grow deep and better connected to our people and better quality, and just really dig into what we're doing rather than growing wider and wider and wider and wider.
Right.
Maybe that will be helpful to you as you make those decisions.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, there's a question
really
here.
Good thing it's a good thing to have with planners, because you get, I'm thinking of my father, who bought these tiny little navy blue planners that he wrote every day in minuscule handwriting what his meal was and how far he walked and what he was reading. And he bought the same one. He got it in his stocking every year for Christmas. And he had like 40 of them. And so when you say deep, when it's things like planners and notebooks, people get so attached to a certain format and a certain look that, developing that core audience is just huge.
Yeah, there's an interesting question here on reaching independent bookstores and if that market's growing now with COVID and a lot of stores being shut, or finding it difficult to get foot traffic. And so a lot of consumers are now shopping online, but then we've also got brands that aren't really necessarily ready to display their product in the best manner. So consumers often go to a website, how can they truly understand this notebook or this product or this planner or this journal? And often there's, we just see a lot of websites will have a square image, a front-facing notebook, which looks like lots of squares on a page. And so you're shopping for squares and colors. So how can you bring that experience out to consumers and the wider audience so that they really truly understand that product? Yes, they're not going to be able to pick it up and hold it, but how can you provide an experience that gives them a better sense for what they're going to buy? And I guess COVID's really helped. For us, as soon as COVID hit, we decided to invest heavily on a new website. I kind of saw this coming. Once COVID hit, we had to shift. We had to shift away from wholesale, and we had big grandiose plans to get distributors and wholesalers, and that just all turned off instantly overnight. So we shifted focus to e-commerce. Like, yes, we've always been an e-commerce driven company, but we've focused heavily on that. How can we provide the best possible experience for anyone who comes onto the website and to discover their products? So we're currently using like 3D renders. So when people select a color, the notebook will change, the paper type will change, and you can kind of shift and see it in an almost 3D fashion, which has really helped us to
Your
provide.
website is so cool. I was on there. I was like, oh my gosh, wait, what's happening? It's so cool.
People are starting to expect that too, to have that experience.
Yeah.
Of like, they're not going to the store for whatever reason, and they want to, when they come to your website, they want to be able to feel like they're feeling it or touching it or seeing it. And so video has become so important. And I agree, your website's amazing. I looked at it after we last talked as well.
Thank you. It's a lot of work. It doesn't.
Yeah.
This is a lot of people think, oh, you just 1 week you changed your website.
Oh.
It's like, no, this is like a 6-month project, and it it was a really time-consuming project. A lot of planning, a lot of like brand exercises, but we're still there's a whole nother rebrand coming again next month to improve it even more. But yeah, just going to back to that question in terms of independent bookstores in the market, and we will be going back there. It's just the strategy is a little different. The big aggressive plan to move into every store is not really the reality anymore. And so we pick our battles, and we really like the nichey, really sharp, tidy stores. Like, those are the ones we like. We refuse to sell to large chains. And that's just our brand, and every brand is different, and every stationery product is different. But we find if like a Karst customer has a certain character type, when they walk into a nice bookstore, they're generally going to be what our customers are looking for. Like, they're going to be our customer fit. And so we try and look for those really nice bookstores, and there's plenty of them, hidden gems all over the world, and we try and make sure that we can be there front facing. But wholesale and e-commerce are completely two different markets, and they're very difficult. And Emily touched on dialing back on the wholesale, and we did the same. Like, it's so much work. Like, you need a lot of people who know what they're doing. And getting your product into stores is one thing, but getting your product to sell in stores is a whole other challenge. And you might get into thousands of stores, but if they're not selling, well, then they're not going to order again, and you're probably not going to get back into that store. So that's something that we always watch out for. So you need like visual merchandising, point of sale, and like the story, and there's just so much moving parts to that. But that's something we're looking at, and the market's very different now. But me, and along with other companies I know as well, is like omni-channel is really the main approach. Like, you need to be able to be everywhere for a customer. So if someone's bought online before and they want to go down to their local bookstore, then they should have that option as well. And so if you can be in as many touch points as possible, then that's really useful.
I wanted to say that for us, lifestyle photography of our products has been enormously helpful. With Potter Gift, we're kind of like a little boutique nested within this giant machine, which is Penguin Random House. So in a way, the way that our special markets reps sell our product is quite a lot the way you do. Is we do focus on small gift shops and places that specialize in paper and really bespoke products. And then what we find is there's a long tail, and then eventually they end up online, and they may bypass Barnes and Noble completely. They might bypass Target completely. But what we have been doing since COVID is making sure that even for the independent booksellers who've been able to pivot and move their business online and keep their customers, is that the lifestyle photography showing, you know, how cute a little girl looks when she's pinning up her growth chart, or, you know, a couple of kids poring over a jigsaw puzzle or something like that. There's something that sort of reaches out from the screen and communicates not just the use case, but sort of the feeling behind the product that's been really helpful to us.
Yeah, I agree with that, because sometimes it seems, as the maker, the person behind the idea of creating it, it's obvious to you how it's supposed to be used, but you know, so many people just kind of need that example of like, okay, this is one possibility, and from there it opens them up from there on what they can do with it and how they can use it, and if they can see themselves in that picture too.
I think that whole experience, that bringing that to the customer, is super important, especially when you're, you know, selling direct to consumer, or you're just trying to reach people online. And it kind of leads as a nice intro to the next topic that I wanted to bring up, which is sustainability, and how it's such an important factor for customers, not only in terms of transparency, environmental practices, and the paper itself, but also packaging and shipping, and overall the complete experience of, you know, to use an Apple Silicon Valley term, you know, the opening, you know, the opening the box and what that experience is like. What are you all doing to take sustainability and in your packaging and all of these different aspects to the next level?
One of the things that I've been doing, I use like compostable sleeves for my products. I found some compostable tape, and I try to reuse certain things. You know, you can't really reuse everything, because then it may not really look so pretty to the customer. But also when I'm packing, I tie everything together with like a piece of fabric, so that it kind of looks like a present when they open the box. And I'm looking into, I do recycled paper in some of my products, but not all. It's something that I'm trying to figure out right now, because it's figuring out the cost and how to get it cut down to what I need it to be to actually work with it. So any little thing I can think of, I'm trying to make any shifts. But yeah, I think that's where I'm at right now. The paper is the biggest thing that I'm concerned about and trying to work on.
Yeah, sustainability is obviously a pretty huge factor for most consumers, and you know, that's the reason why we started this company, or since day one in 2015. You know, we produce paper made from recycled rock waste and stone waste. So we essentially take in calcium carbonate, and we mix that with, and we heat it and we treat it and we roll it out thousands of times, and it becomes basically a waterproof, tear-resistant paper. And yes, it's a different experience to general paper, but there's a whole lot of other advantages that come with it. So our overall impact, we save about 67% carbon emissions compared to every ton of regular paper produced. So that's a big thing that we drive. But when I think about sustainability, I don't only think about product. You know, we're a B Corp certified company. And what that means is that we try to do business for good across all aspects of business within stationery. So whether it's product, whether it's community, whether it's giving back, donations, like we'll always try and do our best to help. But in terms of packaging specifically, it's a really tough one. Like when we ship and send products direct to consumers, we can do our best to remove any plastics, use recycled board, use soy inks where possible. But when we're selling directly to stores and wholesalers, a lot of those stores still require or need plastic wrapping to protect the product, because what's happening is we'll send them thousands of books, they'll put them on the shelf, and everyone's hands are all over them, and the pages tear and the corners bend, and stores don't want that. So it's kind of like a necessary evil at the moment to still have that plastic shrink wrap. So we've worked on biodegradable solutions for that. It's still in its early phases. It's not a very nice thing to have on the outside, even though it sounds great, biodegradable shrink wrap. So there's those options. We'd also use materials outside of paper. So we're looking at recycled aluminiums for our pens, and our pens and our inks. That's a big one as well. And we're now looking at like small leather goods for carry goods for your notebook sleeves and whatnot. And we're using leather made from recycled grape waste. So all the grape waste and the skins from the wine industry, you can now use that to produce a leather alternative that's a vegan option. So these are sort of materials that we focus on, and that's a big part of our company, is figuring out and looking for the latest, best materials to make the best possible products within this whole workspace. So we try and, stationery and notebooks and all that is our prime product, but we still want to focus on the workplace and the home workplace, especially now. Work from home is such a big thing. So yeah, materials is always such a big topic. And one thing I will say is, like, as a company who focuses so heavily on sustainability, like, you're going to get a lot of criticism because people always expect the best. And so it's very difficult. Like, if you're going to be open and transparent about your company, well, then you better expect some kickback, because you're going to get it. And, we've gone through so much at the moment, but it's been a blessing because I've learned so much as well.
Well, it's kind of frustrating in a way, and I think people don't realize that you really are trying, but sometimes what's available can just make the whole thing so much more expensive, and they also don't want to pay. So it's not just snapping your fingers and just making it happen. There's so much more that kind of goes into making sure that they don't really feel a difference. They want the same exact thing, but they want these extra few things as well. So it's a lot of research, and
Totally.
very important.
Well, I can just briefly say Random House has, I'm not standing and sort of selling the big guy, but I think all of our paper worldwide will be bought by the end of this year from certified mills. And we have a solar heated warehouse in Crawfordsville, Indiana. And when it's sunny out, it's 100% powered by solar heating. And we've been able to, partly because of our size, we've been able to invest in these new cardboard box cutters that you can cut exactly to the size of what you're shipping. So that obviates plastic wrap, bubble wrap, and even other kinds of packing you have to put in because it might rattle around. So that's been an investment we've made that's gotten rid of a whole lot of packing material.
Awesome.
We've got a whole committee that looks at all of it and, thinks hard about what we're printing, where we're printing, what printers we're using, where they're sourcing the wood and all of that. But it's an uphill battle. It's really difficult. And I'm really sensitive to what you said about the price, because it's true. You can go find the most, certifiably pure, great product, and there's not very much of it, and B, it costs a lot, and it might be far away and take a long time to get, and if you have a fast reprint you need, all those factors swirl around and make it very difficult, even if you have all the good intentions in the world.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's tough, and we've got to be realistic. Like, we can't make everyone happy. We're going to try our best with what's available. even shipping suppliers, like we've got FedEx, we've got UPS, we've got DHL, like they're doing their best, and we've got packaging suppliers doing their best, and they all come together to try and make this fluid system that is as sustainable as possible. And so it's a matter of time. I think it's good that consumers are aware of it. We're all doing what we can, but it's not an overnight solution. So I think we're all on the right track.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
I mean, all of these efforts sound so impressive, from grape leather to wrapping things up like a gift in recyclable fabric to a solar-powered warehouse. It makes me really excited to see what's coming next. And then my last question, which also sort of ties into two questions that I saw pop up. What are you all focusing on for 2021? And what new trends are you excited to see emerge? And that was also Bridget's question. We have another one. Any thoughts on growth for the next 5 years? So I'm going to kind of ball that up into one sort of grand finale question as we think about next year and the next 5 years, and what you all expect to see, what you're excited about.
I can say, excuse me, what I'm seeing coming around the bend in 2021 is customers expecting more. I have felt for a while now, I'm sure all of you have, that sell online, that we're up against, the Amazons of the world, and our customers expect certain things that are easy to get at places like that. And so we are working on the user experience on our website as a whole, from what happens when they get to the website, what images are they seeing, what Kevin was, or what I've seen on your website with the 3D imaging and the video and that sort of thing. I think that's becoming so very important, because the customers are going to want to see it and feel it, especially if we can't leave our homes. And then focusing on things like shipping and making that as quick as possible, and fulfillment as quick as possible, as painless as possible for the consumer. But it's funny, when I first started my company, my husband, who's also an entrepreneur, said to me, "You're going to make a what? A paper planner? There's iCal." And he was wrong to doubt it, but I don't think it's anything that's changing. I do think that there is always going to be something nostalgic. Someone used that word, something nostalgic, something wholesome, something trustworthy about using a pen and paper in any way, shape, or form. It's something that it will live on past us, and is just, there's so much to me that's connected to legacy, and also using these products not just to communicate with people or to plan your days, but really to kind of guide your life and shape your life and what you're doing with it. So I don't see any of that changing. I think the future is bright for what we're all doing.
I feel that the whole human urge to unplug is going to continue to build, and that's going to be good for all of us, because when you unplug, one of the things you do is you pick up a pen or a pencil or a watercolor brush or something, and open up a book and start expressing yourself. So I think that's one thing I take heart from. And the other is that all the sort of willy-nilly homeschooling that has had to happen has made parents and children much more inclined to do activities together. So we have some pretty sophisticated, highly designed activity books from this company in San Francisco called We Society, and they're children's activity books, but as I said, they've got sort of witty, funny prompts that parents can enjoy as well. And we've seen a tremendous upsurge in that, and I think it is being picked up by parents who want, not just during the formal school day on screen, to go to something that is unplugged, but that encourages creativity and connection.
Well, I agree with all these things. I don't have a really very concrete vision for next year. I'm like trying to figure out what happened this year kind of still, but I definitely feel these things, and just this, we've been forced to center. And so our whole field of paper and, you know, it also has an element of craft to it that we're getting back to a little bit. You know, industry has been removed from us so much. You know, we used to do more hands-on things, just, you know, household things that we don't really, you know, we have Alexa now, so we don't really have to do, you know, even turn switches on. I don't know. So like, it seems like it's helping us circle back. And I think people were forced to get in touch with it again. And I think we like it. You know, we're going to be able to hold on to these, you know, the notebook writing for whatever the purpose, you know, planning or creative, you know, outlets, or, you know, working alongside your homeschooled kid right now. The note writing, the reminding people you're still here, even if you can't see them face to face for now. Like, I think this was a really impactful time. And a lot of this stuff is, you're going to realize like, oh, that was a cool thing that we started to do, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Kevin, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty exciting time. The next 5 years is looking fairly promising. And I just quickly wrote down a few things here. Prompt planners. So I think mental health is a huge one. This year we've seen that, obviously, like that's a difficulty for a lot of people, and they want to be able to express that. So planners that can help address those, that's a big concern. We have a big focus on analog to digital. So everyone's still got their phone, they've still got their laptop, their iPad or whatever, and they always carry a notebook as well. And so these two analog and digital things work side by side. And so how can we make sure that they fit in that world? And so that's, we're trying to bring in like QR codes, how I said, like how can we make this writing experience integrate better with your digital products, because they sit side by side on your desk all the time, all day. So that's something that we're looking at. In terms of our market, like we still focus heavily on customizing products for end consumers. So whether they want their names or their company logos, we provide a lot of products for companies, whether it's Google or Facebook. Companies that still love their notebooks. Like this is a big thing. Like even though these companies who are purely digital, a company like Facebook, they will buy notebooks for all their employees. And so like it's a given that this industry is not going anywhere. People still need to write, they need a way to express. So we're seeing that trend continue. Another trend that we want to focus on next year is like brand collaboration. So partnering with other brands who share a similar vision, who maybe have complementary products that can help your product or your notebook or your piece of stationery. I find that that's a pretty interesting sort of way to do business, and I really kind of like that, like working with other businesses rather than just competing with everyone. You kind of like work together, because at the end of the day, you've got, I think you said this, Olivia, like Amazon, right? We're competing for these big Amazons, and like the thing that we have an advantage of is we're the small guys with, you know, ability to move and do things a lot better than they can do, you know, make them feel something. And then lastly is I think the rise of the small bookstore is back, and I think it's like we're seeing that here in Australia. People aren't going to big shopping malls anymore. Like half of them are closing down, and little bookstores on streets are definitely coming back, and it's great to see. And I saw that in Europe last year as well. I see it here in Australia. I haven't seen it yet in the US, but I think that's about to come. I think COVID's really helped that. And so I'm kind of looking forward to that, the rise of the small bookstore again, because nothing beats like going into a bookstore and that smell of like old notebooks and books and stuff. Oh, it's awesome. So hopefully we see that come back. So those are my 5 things to look forward to in the next few years.
I really like what you said, Kevin, about collaborations, because I'm trying to do a lot more of that too. I think there's so many creative people out there, and 2, 3, 4, 5 heads are better than one, and we can all like come together and make something new and a little bit different, but that still serves both of our individual companies too. And it just opens up, I think, a wider reach for both of our clients to see what's available. And I think too, people are getting away from Amazon. Like we've been saying, it's like now we have time to think. It's like, okay, who is actually making that? Where is that coming from? And feeling more connected to the maker, which is what people can do with us. So it kind of all ties in with scaling back on the wholesale because we want to make those connections. So I think for next year, like I'm still just so super new. So I'm still trying to figure out kind of the way I'm moving too, but I think collaboration is going to help to keep me creative. And just what I'm doing for me is just kind of therapeutic, honestly. Like when I'm making my books for people, it allows me to have internal conversations with myself. And I actually kind of zone out sometimes from what I'm doing when I'm making it, and I become more creative internally. And I think that comes out in the connections that I'm making too. So I'm just excited for the next 5 years. I don't know what they look like, but so far so good, I think.
I think we all have a lot to look forward to. It sounds super exciting, and I'm personally all for the rise of the independent bookstore, and all the new paper smell and old paper smell is just the best. I think especially for those of us who have been stuck at home and missing that. We just got another question. Where do you manufacture your products, and has the tariff situation in China changed that decision?
We, sorry, make sure I wasn't muted. We manufacture in China, the majority of our product, and the tariff situation has been really painful the last couple of years. I would love to manufacture our product domestically. We just, the pricing is just so, yeah, Lindley, you know, it is so much different. I don't think that our company could survive it, honestly, if we were to move at this point. If I will continue to march down that path, because when the option is available, I will do it. But right now we work with some really fantastic manufacturers that we know well, who are certified in all the right places. And kind of, Kevin, you mentioned this earlier about sustainability, and not just sustainability, but doing good in all the areas. And making sure you know who's making your product and who's, you know, actually on the floor making your product, and giving back, and just doing lots and lots of due diligence across all of those places. So we are manufacturing in China. We'll continue to. We have started looking at options in other countries, but as any of you who manufacture in China know, there are places in China where they are just so good at it. And so that's kind of what we're up against. So for us, it's just a continuing thing, and we'll continue to look for alternatives. But right now, I'm happy to, well, I'm not happy to pay the tariff, but I pay the tariff and feel good about the product that we're making.
I concur completely, Emily. I'm right with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's similar to us. Like we produce or manufacture a lot of our notebooks in China, and the tariff in the US is obviously had an impact, but there's not, you know, there's nothing we can do. Consumers want what we have to offer, and that's just the price we have to pay. In Europe, it's the tariffs are generally high anyway. But you know, we produce a lot of our materials in Taiwan. One thing that will say that has become difficult is finding new suppliers for new products. You know, before it'd be really easy. I'd jump on a plane and go visit them, and
yeah,
you know, we're trying to look at this leather alternative, and it's in Italy, and I can't go there to meet them, and I can't see what their factories are like, and I need to go there. Same with like if we're going to a new printer and it's in China, like I just can't see myself going there anytime soon. So that's become a whole nother challenge. And so with, you know, making a new product now has extended lead times. that used to be, you know, really quickly. You'd have this idea of this product, you'd go visit the facility, the factory and whatever, and get your sample done, talk about the sample when you're there. This is what I want changed, make it. Now it's, oh, here's some drawings, here's an email, send me the sample. 2 weeks later, you get the sample, then you send the sample back. And before you know it, it's like 3 months have changed and you're still in like sampling mode. So that's a challenge that we're finding, not just for stationery, but everything as a whole. But yeah, manufacturing overseas is difficult. And like, it's 2020, you think business would be easy to do overseas and make things overseas and sell things overseas, but it's actually getting more difficult. Like we got thrown another curveball this month with Brexit, like the UK leaving the EU, and that's become very, very complicated because we have a large audience in England, in Great Britain, and we now have to pay a huge tariff every time we ship a product to England from a European warehouse. So that complicates things further. So yeah, like I think there's always going to be these challenges with international business and shipping international products, and that's kind of the price we pay, I guess.
Well, and I just want to chime in that we've been with our printers for almost 30 years, so they're like, you know, partners, really. I mean, it's not adversarial. I know there's an element of that was, you know, created and emphasized, and I mean, it's like one world, right? So, you know, I love where I live and I love being American, but I also, you know, I love the work that we're doing with our partners overseas, and we design it here and we have our staff here, and then, you know, they're kind of an extension of our family in a way, like over time, and we know each other well, and we love each other's work, and we, you know, share the benefits and we share the challenges. And you know, the tariff was pretty horrifying and unexpected and kind of bizarre, frankly. And there's a possibility that they'll, you know, some changes are on the horizon. That's one of those 2021 hopeful predictions, you know, you never know. But it's a relationship.
Yeah, and just quickly, Emily, you also said about like price and making things in China, and like we make things in China not because it's cheaper, but because they're so damn good at it. Are they so damn good at making like stationery products and notebooks? Like they have mastered their craft. Mm-hmm. And you know, we can go make books anywhere else in the world, but it's yeah, we might pay similar prices or whatever, but it's just the quality is just so good, and they can do it at such scale and such speed and efficiency that's what we're doing it for. Not necessarily because it's cheaper or we're trying to save the dollar. And I think sometimes consumers get annoyed at companies like, oh, you're making your stuff in China, why are you doing that? And sometimes it's just because that's where the best product can be manufactured and produced and printed. And so that's something that we try to inform our consumers about.
Great. That's super fascinating as someone who doesn't deal so much with the import, export, and tariff side of things. I'm going to give just a couple seconds. If you do have a question and you haven't asked it yet, feel free to go ahead and put it in the Q&A. But if we've answered everyone's questions, then I think we'll wrap it up. I'm just going to wait a minute to see if anyone has been shy or holding back. Okay, I think we answered all the questions, hopefully, and thank you all so much I know I can't see everyone, but a huge round of applause for the panelists. You all were amazing and really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us today. And thank you to the Book Industry Guild of New York for having us. This was super fun.
Olivia and
Thank
panelists,
you.
I also want to just add our gratitude. This was great. It was so interesting. And I just loved hearing about all this wonderful, exciting, tactile and good smelling part of our business. I also want to wish everyone a really peaceful, fulfilling, and healthy new year. And I would invite everyone out there to please join us on January 19th for our annual President's Night, when Madeline McIntosh of Penguin Random House will be speaking to us all. But again, thank you all so very much for taking the time to do this. I know it was a big commitment on your part, and we're very grateful to you all. Thank you.
Thank
It was a
you.
huge pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mhm. Happy New Year to everyone too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was great meeting everyone.
Too.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.